Hey guys, I got a busy day of editing and filming ahead of me, trying to make that debate special I've been talking up so much and trying to get a couple other videos out. But before I get out of bed today, I just thought I'd do a shameless call out to try to get in a few good old arguments with some people out there. Anybody who might want to try to disagree with me because, I like people who disagree with me. They're kind of fun. So, I would like to make a suggestion that there is not one legitimate reason based on either policy or actual electability in a general election to vote for any other candidate on that stage over Tulsi Gabbard. And some of you are going to disagree with me. A lot of you are going to go, hell yeah, but some of you are going to disagree with me. I would love to hear why. Because let's break this down for a sec. The DNC really shorted us in 2016. People are aware that this is sort of a lesser of two evils, ridiculous clown show race in general, and that the DNC likes to meddle with our elections. So, people aren't going to put up with just another corporate candidate that will beat Donald Trump. A lot of people are saying, okay, if you want to beat Donald Trump, give us someone worth voting for. Because you didn't give us the candidate we wanted in 2016, and you eat your crow for it. If you don't give us the candidate in 2020, you're going to keep eating crow. Because we all recognize that y'all hate Trump. The media Borg does not like him. You may think whatever you think about him. The media Borg, the people who make a lot of money selling us war and violence and destruction, they don't like him. You know why they don't like him? I don't know if you noticed, but we haven't started any new wars yet. I'm just saying. Um, you know, Orange Man bad, Orange Man good, whatever. Good. Whoa, I'm not. Whoa, I'm not gonna go that far. Orange Man maybe not potentially the most dangerous president we've had in my lifetime. I'll give you that one. I don't want to get tarred and feathered, but I would certainly be willing to argue with Bernie all damn day that Donald Trump is not the most dangerous president that we have even had in the last several presidencies. I would say he might be the least. Sure, it was scandal free, but we increased our spying, we increased our drone striking, we increased the ability for the official silencers and censorers to keep the people who want to bring up these issues from reaching most people's attention. None of those are good things. Meanwhile, we can compare that to people being more involved in politics because they realize that after that lesser of two evils clown show in 2016, they need to actually pay attention, recognizing that there is fake news and that we are lied to a lot. And again, we're not in any new wars. They're not making a new war in order to make an excuse to crash our economy and say, well, the war did it. It has nothing to do with our faulty economic system. So I'm just saying, we could be much worse. Nobody's been nuked. But that wasn't the point of this talk. Sorry to get a little sidetracked. The point I'm trying to make is that the people who run our country, who make more money than anyone knows what to do with, and use that money to do horrible things and manipulate everyone else's view of what reality is, they don't like Donald Trump. They would really rather have someone else in. I mean, they'll keep him in rather than go with Tulsi Gabbard because they're way more afraid of him. At least Donald Trump is a businessman they can control, right? Like, Tulsi is just gonna collapse all their crap and make the world better for all humanity. So scary. So horrifying. The only reason anyone has been able to give me not to vote for Tulsi Gabbard that is not a completely baseless smear is that she's not a legitimate candidate and not doing very well in the polls. They're polls. Polls are meant to influence, not gauge public opinion. And as long as you keep believing what the polls tell you, they can keep using that political device in order to rig our elections and sway our votes. If you won't vote for her because the DNC won't sponsor her, that gives the DNC 100% ability to tell you who is and is not an acceptable candidate. We, the American people, all believe Tulsi Gabbard is an acceptable candidate. It doesn't matter whether the DNC bars her from debate 3 onward. She is running an excellent campaign 45 minutes at a time, educating people and getting people fired up. If they don't want to give us a real candidate, if they don't give us Tulsi or Bernie, or maybe Andrew Yang, I don't think he's a real candidate. I think he's very much a corporate puppet, but I'm just saying those are the 3 people who could beat Donald Trump. If they want to give us anyone else, they are admitting defeat and they are going to look really bad in 2024 because for 2 years, for 2 elections in a row, the people had a candidate they wanted and they said, Nah, I think we can beat Donald Trump with someone else. And they lost. That's not going to look good. They don't want that. They really want to avoid that. So they need to make sure that we elect someone who can at least make a really good effort at the presidency. I'm sorry, but if you think that Warren is appealing to families, you know who she's not appealing to? People who understand history. People who recognize that it's really easy to pay someone to campaign and that career politicians aren't what we want and need anymore. Warren will not beat Donald Trump. She's going to start taking PAC money as soon as she gets the nomination. Once we, the people, can no longer influence whether or not she is our nomination, she's just going to start taking money from whoever. But even if she didn't, she has no way of beating Donald Trump because she's so corporate. Too many pictures with her and Hillary. Even if you don't believe it, there are people who do. I'm just saying. You need someone who's going to inspire people to show up because I know that's the candidate for me. I know that candidate's going to bring the change that Obama promised. Tulsi will do that. I believe Bernie will do that. I believe Andrew Yang will convince people he will do that. Nobody believes Warren's going to do that. Some people might, but she's talking the right talk. Plenty of people have talked the right talk. Let's go to Bernie. Since I think that Bernie is one of the people that could actually beat Donald Trump, let's point out why I don't think there's a single reason to vote for Bernie over Tulsi. There's plenty of things that Bernie supports. Medicare for all, universal education. You know what Tulsi supports? Broadening our medical care so that we don't just keep treating people, we use the best cures we have available to us. Promoting organic farming and agrotourism. Getting us off fossil fuels by 2035, getting us 100% sustainable, bountiful, limitless energy by 2035, not 2050 burn. Y'all should read Canadian ex-Prime Minister of Defense Paul Hellier's book, The Money Mafia. He believes he's seen technology that could give the entire world energy within 7 years, forever. That's what Tulsi's aiming for. Not by 2050 either, because it only is going to take 7 years. Why make the deadline 2050 and give them time to change it later? It just doesn't make sense, Bern. Give me a better climate policy or GTFO. No offense. I mean, much respect, dude. Like, you've been championing the progressive movement. You've been really, like, promoting a lot of things that people need to hear about. But pass the torch, dude. There is a better candidate. Period. She's a young combat veteran, multi-spiritual woman of color, plus Bernie Sanders policy, with a better foreign policy. And she's not afraid to sue our alphabet overlords in the middle of an election season to stand up for fair and unbiased elections. She's trying to pass legislation to make our elections unhackable, and she's been trying to pass the OFF Act that gets us off fossil fuel subsidies and ending fracking and offshore drilling since 2012 on the floor of Congress. Y'all reading me? Now, let's cover Yang really quick before we go into some of the lesser candidates. And sorry, I don't mean to say that Tulsi's a top-tier candidate, Kamala. I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm just being realistic here. Like, there are a few candidates that can win the presidency and a lot of candidates who can't. To me, that makes them the greater candidates, since the goal is to win a presidency, not to nominate somebody who's electable for being nominated for a primary. No, the goal is to win a presidency. Who's going to win a presidency? You cannot tell me objectively that there's anyone who has a better chance of winning that presidency than Tulsi. It's just not true. She's attracting people from the right. And that's something that's scary. You should be afraid because she's voted with Republicans every now and then because she votes on rationality, not based on what her party's voting on. She's not beholden to party politics? What are we going to do? We're all going to die. No, but seriously, she's awesome. I had a point I was trying to make, but then I died. Yang, they're both supporting UBI. Tulsi's supporting a UBI. If you haven't heard, it's called the Peace Dividend, and the cool thing about Tulsi's UBI is it did the math. It recognized that what Yang is suggesting is not a floor so that all citizens can get themselves up off the floor. It is a ceiling for how much benefits people who are in destitute poverty are able to receive. Because it doesn't make sense to me that me, as a middle-class, well-off, comfortable American, CEOs, working class, everybody who is able to provide for themselves to some greater degree than the person who's on disability or food stamps, everybody gets $1,000 a month. But those people on disability or food stamps get to choose between what they have now or $1,000 a month. How does that make sense? If you're unable to provide for yourself already, give those people less money than the people who already provide for themselves successfully? That's not humanity first. Let me tell you what humanity first is. Humanity first is food stamps currently cost us less than 1% of a UBI, and they are one of our most effective social welfare safety nets. They have a very low rate of fraud. That's 1% of what a UBI is going to cost at current levels. And you can imagine, once we get a UBI, there will be people who go, food stamps are incredibly cumbersome and embarrassing to use, and I don't need them because I'm getting $1,000 a month. So we're talking about a fraction of a percent of what this UBI is going to cost to feed kids. Because the people who need the food stamps, yeah, sure, some of them might be just the druggie who doesn't want to work, so they're going to get a UBI and stamps. There might be a few people in that boat. But the majority of them, we're going to be talking about single moms with 3 kids under 18. And it's a matter of keeping those kids in school, because if you don't feed them, they're going to have to drop out and work or worse in order to provide for their family. It is criminal. You cannot tell me it is humanity first that the single mom with 3 kids calling into Scott Santon's show, who's so excited about getting $4,000 a month, and find out she's getting $1,000 a month and losing her $900 in benefits, you can't tell me that is even mildly morally acceptable, let alone humanity first. Humanity first is letting anyone who needs extra support for food to have access to food for any reason, because it doesn't matter. You're talking about a very cheap government program that provides people with sustenance to survive, and they're paying money to a grocery store to do it. It supports our economy just like a UBI does, costs less than a fraction of a percent of a UBI, and protects our hungriest from going hungry. And it makes it so that this UBI is a proper floor, so that people can actually get themselves out of poverty. Not a ceiling, so that anyone who's currently receiving benefits isn't going to be receiving more than $1,000 in benefits, and anyone who's already doing well for themselves will be making that $1,000 that everyone else makes on top of what they already make. That increases wealth gap. And sure, UBI is great for poverty. I'm not trying to argue that it's not. I'm trying to argue that there's a better UBI on the table that gives people food. I don't know why this is such a hard argument to make. Yang came up with the idea. It's a 100-year-old idea. Yang did not come up with this idea. He started campaigning on the idea a little bit before everybody else. But Marianne was the first person to bring up UBI in the debates, not Andrew Yang. Y'all can rewind the tape with me on that one. $500, but she was the first one to bring it up. Tulsi's also championing a UBI. You know what neither of those candidates do that Andrew Yang does? Promote an active censorship policy. His media fragmentation policy wants to reunify the press. The government is going to make a media task force with the leaders of our big tech and industry so that they can find answers to the problem of Russian election meddling. Now, let me ask you this. A lot of independent voters and Trump voters do not believe the Russian narrative because it is total crap. Because when you break it down realistically, there is no connection with Donald Trump, and the only connection there is with anything was a private company hiring private Russian citizens to go on Twitter and talk to us. And even our mainstream news media admits that it wasn't that effective. Now, some of the Russian bots came out of Virginia, and yet we still call them Russian bots. It came out that they were actually just trying to sabotage someone's campaign, and then someone else said, look, he's being supported by Russians, blah, 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 blah. It was kind of a mess. But when we start saying that people are Russians influencing our election, you can now call anyone a Russian. I've been called a Russian so many times on Twitter. It is dangerous and not productive for our actual discourse. If you can just discount what someone's saying when you disagree with them, or when you want someone else to disagree with them, call them a Russian troll, whatever, that's not productive. And if the Russian trolls aren't that effective anyway, and they're private citizens practicing their, I don't know if they have a right to free speech, but we have a right to free speech, so I think we should respect Russians practicing their free speech on American networks. It's just not as big of an issue as what our own agencies do election meddling in other countries, or election meddling in our own country. Now, we've got candidates going, Russia, 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 don't look at the DNC, don't look at Google. And then you've got Tulsi Gabbard suing Google and outspoken about the DNC, who is being manipulated out of their debates very, very blatantly. Now, a lot of people are going to vote Bernie Sanders over Trump because they voted for Trump because they couldn't vote for Bernie Sanders in 2016. But, sorry, I don't mean to say that anything along the lines of like Bernie Sanders voters lost us to Trump, or people say dumb stuff. I don't know if it was Bernie Sanders voters specifically that voted for Trump or people who would have voted for Bernie but couldn't and didn't want to vote for the most corporatist candidate we've ever seen run. Regardless, we lost because they fielded Bernie. Let's not try to point the blame on each other as voters. Let's point the blame where the blame really belongs. That DNC, I won't say F Wittery, but F Wittery. They were effing with our stuff. So, instead of going with the guy who kisses DNC butt, while the DNC then turns around his Russia narrative and says Bernie's being supported by the Russians that he's always, always, always talking about. I don't know about always, sorry. I don't mean to discredit Bernie. I will admit, I'll give him credit where credit's due. He doesn't overhype the Russia thing, but he is hyping the Russia thing. Objectively, you have two candidates with very similar policies promoting the same progressive movement. One is willing to mislead the people in order to promote the DNC's perpetuation of a lie, and you can say that's for getting elected, greater good, whatever. My issue is there are people who believe it. There are people like my aunt who until 2 weeks ago didn't believe Bernie Sanders got rigged out of the election because if he did, he would have been outspoken about it. Bernie's not afraid to speak up against the establishment. And yeah, he's got a piece of paper saying, yeah, I was rigged, but he's not speaking about it. And a lot of people aren't going to read or hear about that piece of paper. People like my aunt want to hear the words because they trust Bernie. When Bernie says Russia's a big deal, a lot of people go, oh, I kind of wasn't thinking this Russia thing was a big deal because it hasn't amounted to much, but Bernie's talking about it. It must be a big deal. And then, even if all Bernie says is that there was some meddling and he doesn't go over the top, he doesn't perpetuate and really expand on the lie, it doesn't matter. Bernie said Russians. Now DNC and CNN can say Russia, Russia, Russia all they want. And look, even Bernie's talking about it. It's that simple. It is as simple as that. Bernie is willing to mislead the American people, minutely, but still, he is, objectively, in order to get elected. Tulsi absolutely is not. She called out Kamala for being divisive against Joe Biden, and nobody thought that was a good political move. There aren't Joe Biden supporters now going, oh, I'll vote for Tulsi because she's defending Joe Biden. There are no Joe Biden supporters. Any Joe Biden supporters there are only supporting Joe Biden because of name recognition and because their head is buried in the sand so far that they're not going to hear about Tulsi Gabbard supporting Joe Biden anyway. By the way, when I say supporting, I'm not trying to say that she agrees with his campaign or anything like that. I'm trying to say that she's calling out divisive politicking and nonsense wherever it stands, and people saw that as support, not as trying to be non-divisive and compassionate. So if you want to call it supporting the unsupportable candidate, do what you will. I'm not going to give her flack for it because she wasn't doing it to try to be a racist or to try to gain political points. She was doing it because she saw people being bullies and went, guys, let's stop. That's admirable. Knowing that that's not going to give you political points, knowing that there's going to be heavy backlash against that, she did it anyway. That was one of the coolest things I've seen in this campaign, honestly. Like, she had the bravery to, instead of going with the flow or remaining silent, she spoke up. She's the only one speaking up every single time. Now, you want to tell me that Cory Booker is going to inspire people more than that? That Kamala, the ex-prosecutor, is more deserving of your vote than the lady who's actually going to implement all of this great flowery language that the other people are talking about? Sure, the DNC banned her from the debate. They can't ban her from the polls. We'll see where things lie in May. She got 8% in Iowa the other day. She got 9% in New Hampshire the other day. She regularly polls above between 4 and 6 of the other candidates on that stage. We're winning this one. They can say what they want. They can try to get you to believe what they want. But at this point, all they've done is given us the silver bullet. Because anyone who joins the Aloha Wave doesn't leave. There's no reason to. There is no better candidate. And now, we have the ultimate reason why you should vote for Tulsi. Because they're trying so hard to keep you from hearing about her, to keep you from believing that she is the one. that it is so readily apparent to anyone who is half paying attention that she's the one. And there's nobody who's going to be politically, like, going after, promoting, actively championing anyone else besides Bernie Sanders. Warren's campaign is going to fizzle because of the things that I've said. She can't win. She doesn't inspire people. She says the right things, and she does inspire some people. I shouldn't say that she's uninspiring, but she doesn't inspire the independents. She doesn't inspire the well-informed. She inspires the people that go, yeah, shit's messed up and someone's talking about it. I'm going with her. But when you compare her rhetoric to Tulsi Gabbard, Warren says, I know what's wrong and I'm going to fix it. We're all going to get together on the table with small farmers and big farmers and we're going to talk this stuff out. She doesn't have a vision. Tulsi, in any 5 minutes, is educating the voters on what is wrong with the world. She's the only candidate on that stage promoting a policy of opening our education curriculum, not just universalizing our indoctrined education. She's going to get us learning real history and economics so we stop falling for their crud anymore. You know how big that is. It's huge. So, when you compare that to someone who knows what needs doing and is going to fix it, I'm sorry, but even if that's true, Warren, which I'm not sure I buy it at all. You talk a lot of talk, but there's a lot you don't talk about. But even if that's true, shouldn't you do your civic duty as part of the progressive movement and educate your voters as well so that we can all champion these things together? You point out a lot of the problems. Tulsi points out a lot of the solutions. And points out corruption in areas that y'all never will. She's the only candidate who is touching the people herders with a 20-foot pole. She opened her campaign with a policy on trafficking. They probably made her take it down because it's not on her website anymore. She still talks about it, but it's not on her website anymore. Now compare that to everyone else who doesn't have a policy on it and is completely silent on the issue. Censorship allows people movers to keep doing what they're doing. A universal basic income will allow people who control people's lives to go gangbusters and make so much money it will make our heads spin. And money is what lets people who like to snatch kids do what they do, because no one's going to snatch a kid for $50. You need money to bribe someone to do something that truly vile. If you give them $1,000 per person that they control, if you give the cult of Scientology $1,000 for every person that they can bring through their doors, mega churches and cults are going to go nuts, trafficking rings are going to go nuts, and you know who is talking about those issues? Tulsi Gabbard. Do you know who's silent on those issues while promoting a UBI that will definitely inflame them? Andrew Yang. He has a censorship policy of actively wanting to unify the press, and the press reunifies on keeping these issues under the rug. Are you with me yet, Yang Gang? There's a better UBI on the table. There just is. Media fragmentation policy. He's got 179 policies because he doesn't want you to find that one. Read it, please. All right, guys. I think that's it for my morning message. Aloha, mahalo, love y'all, shalom, and take care. Don't let the Skeksis steal your essence. Keep doing what you do, keep making good choices, and let's win this one, boys.